In today's tutorial, we are going to take a bit closer look to hi-hats on kind of melodic techno or progressive house. Even in some cases minimal techno, I will say half of the regular techno as well. So basically having these different layers of hi-hat and what you have to be careful when you are making your hi-hats. I will also explain a bit different hi-hats or different, I would say not only hi-hats but like a different pieces of your high-end could be probably a better explanation. So hang with me, it will be a bit technical tutorial, but I think it is important to understand what we are doing and why we are doing. Other than that, before we start with the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell button so that you get notifications when we make a new video like this. Other than that, let's take a look. So I prepared this loop and it sounds like this. Kind of ambient-ish, kind of a melodic-ish sound, I would say. What I'm going to do, I oftentimes start with the 16 hats. And what is a 16 hat, you would ask, and you would be right. 16 hats is the hi-hats you will always hear, like going behind your hat, and it's always that, like bum 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 bum. You will hear it all the time, and there are a couple of different things that you should be careful about these hi-hats, and why you should be using it, when you should be using it, and what they do to your track. So what I'm going to do, basically kick this up here. We're gonna go to do production music lives, I don't know, the premium, and just get open hi-hat. I like to get my open hi-hats a bit darker, so basically at the moment I'm looking for kind of a white noises. Yeah, here we go, this one will work. Like this, right? And then we're gonna just put it like this. Let's make it longer so that it's easier to group them up. Obviously, this is a bit too much and it will kind of kill your ears if you do it this way. When you are doing your open hi-hats, you should be thinking about what they do. They basically will give the driving energy to your track. It will drive your track further. It's quite often that you will use these hi-hats when you're getting close to your chorus or add them up in the build up so that it takes your track going. You don't want to have super resonant 16 hi-hat because they're always there. It will irritate the people. And if you are having bright hi-hat, you should be putting this one to the lower side a bit darker. And if you are having darker hi-hat, you should be on the brighter side a bit higher. So basically you should be careful about the frequency of your 16 hi-hat compared to your regular hi-hat. And if you are using, for example, shaker, then you should be thinking about that. For example, if you are using shaker, it's often that you probably use a bit brighter, I would say, 16 hats. The length of the 16 hat should be quite short so that it doesn't take too much space. So in this case, what we are going to do, move this like this and make it even shorter, like this. And it's often quite good to get a slight fade in so that it doesn't get this super aggressive transient in the beginning. Let's cut this off. As you take a look at here, this is actually quite a rich 16 hi-hat. You see a lot of harmonics there, so it will take a lot of space in your track. So you can even make it smaller, like this. So that it is really short, so that the space it is taking, it's shorter in time, so there's still a lot of things on the background. Here we go. The things that is done with the 16 hat often is that you sidechain the kick. I would suggest do it immediately before you forget it. This will also help to give the groove to your track, so let's sidechain the kick. And because it's a very aggressive transient sound, I would also use the look ahead, so when the kick hits, you just don't have it there. You should be being careful with the reverb. If you use a long reverb and long tail, because we are playing it all the time, it will cause other issues. A super short reverb oftentimes works if we put it here. Something like this. What is interesting for this type of sound, because it's always there, it's easier to pan this sound. Basically adding this movement, adding the auto pan, for example, pushing it right and left, which we can try quickly. Like this. And you can utilize something like this, so that the movement is a bit like polyrhythmic, so it's not really following the, it's like kind of having its own character. Other thing that is important, actually, they're also quite easy, or kind of makes sense to use the grooves, simply because you have a lot of hitting all the time. If you just have it this way, it will be kind of boring, if that makes sense. There are a couple of ways to do it. Before, for example, in my previous videos, I used how you can utilize LFO, so that the length of the or the length or the loudness of the 16-Hz changes. But in this one, I'm gonna just show you applying a groove and why it could be a good idea. We're gonna open this, browse the groove library. We're gonna go to percussion, something like this, or I have no idea. It will be anything. I don't care at the moment. I'm gonna just apply maybe this guy over here, and then what we can do, maybe decrease the timing a little bit. Also we'll stay a little bit so that it's not 100%, and apply it. Now you see that we have this slight movement. It should be also kind of, yeah, it's not affecting too much for the placement, but you can even do it manually. It depends on what you want, like giving this a slight movement here, and they oftentimes end up with the interesting movement. So if we try this like this. I see that we missed that. Let's take it back. I see also there that we missed that. Let's do it this way and loop back again. Let's move it there. Here we go. Problem solved. Let's do it all the same way. The thing that you can do is definitely adding a vocoder if you want to make richer sound, but I like to keep my 16 hi-hat again simple. It is always there. You don't want to overdo them, and you don't want to make overreach 16 hi-hats, because it may really take over your mix and start to be too overwhelming. So when you are done with the 16-hat, you should be considering, okay, this sound, because we make it a bit darker, it makes that maybe we can use a kind of a brighter hi-hat. And oftentimes hi-hat has like the closed hi-hat and open hi-hat, and you can even see people like layering 5 different hi-hats to make a good hi-hat. It's fine, you can do it, but I feel like you can also choose a better sample to avoid layering that much. So what I'm going to do, go to Production Music Live and try to find something kind of interesting, a brighter, because I remember that everything was brighter here, so we will find it quite fast. So yeah, all of them. Let's take this one, the first choice, first click. Here we go. Put this down. The first thing that you feel like, that trance in the beginning is a bit too much. I'm going to avoid that, and I'm going to shorten this one as well. This is like a much more pleasant to my ear. It also works quite nicely with the track. When you have this kind of ambient sound, if you have too big hi-hats, it will start to sound like tech house. And if you use, for example, 808 808 open hi-hats, it will sound tech house. So you should be careful about your selection. You should consider what you aim for. And I think this is one of the biggest mistakes that beginner producers make, because they want to have the nicest sounding hi-hat, and they want to have nicest sounding shaker, nicest sounding 16 hats, nicest sounding rights. Nice sound often means that louder or more harmonics. Like the reason that we often think the Sawtooth is better than, for example, sine wave. Sine wave has single harmonic, but Sawtooth has a lot of harmonics, and it will hence sounds more complicated and nicer. The same thing with the sample selection. If you pick something super rich and another one and another one and another one, that means that you have a lot of harmonics occupying exactly the same area, and it will be really hard to mix them. So in this case, this is the same thing over here. Also thinking about not only the harmonics, but the length. If you have a super long tail, it will also means that you don't have space to anything else. So let's start with this. What I like to do oftentimes, add a LFO here now, just to make this open the head a bit more interesting. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to go max for live, pick an LFO, and then pick another LFO. The first LFO will be on the fade out. And then let's decrease the depth and offset this a little bit. And put it into random. And then we're going to increase the rate. Let's do it in the 6th. Every hit is different. Simple trick, but quite useful when you want to make a bit more interesting hi-hat sound. And I'm going to take this second one and I'm going to put it to fade in. But this one shouldn't be too much, otherwise it will be really weird, like this. So we're going to decrease the depth quite a lot. And then offset it to the left. Somewhere around here. So we still have a slight attack here. And increase the depth slightly. And then put another random right over there. Similar thing over here. 1/8. Here we go. Again, if you don't want it that moves that much, you can always decrease the depth. So, and you can always change the offset. So movement is much less than. Here we go. Another thing that I like myself is which makes hi-hats a bit more organic, is adding a vocoder and then just blending this in. If I solo this, you will hear that this is adding this nice grain to the sound. Almost making it like a shaker. You should be careful about this one. If you are making shaker, which we are going to add, if you overdo this, your shaker will be kind of blocked by your hi-hats. So I'm going to keep it pretty subtle and pretty short. And probably add those richness on the high end. You can basically pick which harmonics that you're going to add. And then you should consider compressing your hi-hats if they are too dynamic, which in this case, what we have, let's put it after the EQ. I turn off, I don't like makeup gain oftentimes. Make it slightly faster. Faster release as well. Nice and easy. Let's play together. Now, we have to play these two together and see if they work. The one thing that you realize when the hi-hat is actually, you should maybe consider ducking this. If these two were in the same rack, we could actually use the drum rack's own thing, on ducking property. Hopefully you don't hear this weird noise, but probably you do. Sorry for that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn this off. So that they don't crash each other. That means that we don't need to EQ that neither, because they don't play anymore together. Easy trick. Again, before you consider EQing stuff, you should consider, can I solve the issue without EQing it? Because any EQ that you do onto sound is kind of damaging your sound, and that means that your sound is not the same anymore. It works quite nice. Oftentimes you can add a closed hi-hat on top of this one to make it a bit more, I would say, gritty. But in this case, I feel like this sounds nice. But I will consider, let's just call it the open hi-hat, adding a shaker, almost like giving this more organic percussion feeling. So I'm thinking of finding a sound in another camera so that I don't need the EQ too much. Like, I'm always considering what type of frequency range I can apply here, if they would sit together nicely, and if I need to do a lot of EQing or not. So let's go to Production Music Lives. I guess, yeah, shaker. So I'm interested in more like organic style shaker sound. This one is actually sounds fine. Let's try this and see if it works. I'm gonna take this. I'm even thinking, like, what if we do something like this? Get this really nice tail over here. Here we go. Again, when you are looking at sound, you should consider, like, okay, is there part of the sound that is more interesting than the original sound? This is like including some type of noise, but this part is more like a really organic sound, which is quite interesting. There's one trick that you should consider when you are making shaker shaking. So this one is just simple shake, like this thing. Fine, but a bit kind of boring. But I would suggest just copy this guy 2 times and start making this. So if I do this, for example, it becomes like this, but it's not good enough at the moment. We are going to take care of that. So you would like to have this one shorter, less volume. You see, the last one is a bit oftentimes louder, but again, kind of, you can play with the fade out, fade in as well. Or maybe press completely the other way around, longer and shorter like that. And maybe this one as well, longer. And then you can also play the timing here. Maybe zoom in a bit more. I like still the second one with the faster, like this. And the first one is longer. It would be even longer, really like this. So it's like sweeping in almost. Nicely blended. Look what it does. Again, we will take a look at the frequencies. I think there are some things that are crashing really, but even without any EQing, anything, they sit already blend nicely together because they are doing different things. Like this one is on the back, giving this driving effect. This one is just open hi-hat, and this one is just giving this back sound. But this problem at the moment is a bit too loud, of course. And then I think I can even think of ducking slightly this guy when the hi-hat is on the area exactly hi-hat hitting. So what I'm going to do, probably Pro MB, my friend, is very useful for this type of things. What I'm going to do, Sidechain 11, open hi-hat, right? And I'm going to open this up. Look, you can visually actually see where the crash is happening. Like my shakers is here, a bit strong, but hi-hat is also kind of strong there. If I do this and put a slash short here, and even maybe add a look ahead, it almost feels like the shaker is actually the tail of the hi-hat itself, simply because we are tucking the shaker a little bit and letting it go right after. So look at this. Sorry for that, let me turn that off. Another thing that you can do, of course, is a simple trick many people forget. You can actually play with the placement of your shakers. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this off. Let's think. Which one is better? If my shaker comes slightly ahead or before the hi-hat, or if my shaker comes slightly after the hi-hat. Now we are decking the shaker. So if I play it earlier, then my shaker will be starting and then my hi-hat is ducking, and then it will be like sounding less and then sounding more again. So it will be weird. But if I just play the shaker right after the hi-hat, really small, that means that my trance is not really hitting my shaker. So right here, move it a bit. A bit more maybe. Here we go. So we just avoided that initial hi-hat hit, give that space, and then the rest we are still ducking slightly if I show you. But we are still availability, that maybe push it a bit more. That's it. Less. And maybe decrease the range a bit. And still fine. Just like that. But I often suggest after, again, this is not all the low end that you will be doing. You should be maybe adding a bit more hi-hats and so on, but we don't have time for that, and otherwise it will be super long tutorial. What I want to do, some other tricks that you should be considering. Let's call it hi-hat. Group processing, reverbs, delays, and saturations, and of course the compression. What I like often to do, apply a glue compressor and apply an EQ. Cut these super lows. I often like sweep this out and try to see where the sound really gets damaged or starts sounding weaker. I think it's almost fine until 1K. I'm slightly boosting it 1K because I'm cutting super hard so that it still sounds balanced a little bit, like this. And then I'm gonna decrease this guy over here and try to grab. Just a bit makeup, soft clip. It's nice layered. There are a couple of tricks that you can do here. Either put a reverb here and send it to the reverb, for example here. So that everything is sent. Issue with this one is basically because your 16 hi-hat is there, then you're sending that one as well. This could be a problem, or you can just process these two guys together and send that instead. So like this. Or if you don't want to have more control over this one, then you can actually put a reverb over here on the group and then process there a little bit slightly. Again, you shouldn't overdo this. It should be slight reverb. Something like this, right? What I would often suggest that you are doing is always kind of a mono check to see if it works. Fine. This also means that actually, because the sounds are sitting on different ranges, even we pan them and they come back, they are not occupying the same frequency anyway, so you are able to hear it. This gives also the opportunity for us, for example, using kind of a widener, or you can use more advanced like ozone and so on and make it a bit wider as well. So if I take a look at this, it's 100% almost mono. The main thing is moving around the 16 head. The other guys are pretty mono. I think maybe shaker is a bit not mono neither, so we can check that quickly. It's also 100% mono. So this can also give you an idea at this part. Okay, if you want to make the sound a bit stereo, what you should do. The easy answer is, okay, just pan it. The lazy answer, the more interesting answer is just to take a look at the shaker. We had these guys over here, right? What happens if you pan these guys instead? So right, left, main hit. It will also make the sound much more interesting in that case. So if I play this, I know this gets a bit advanced, a bit unorthodox with many things, but this will the tricks that you will see or hear with the more professionals, or more, I wouldn't say professional, but more experienced producers, because they know these kind of small tricks that nobody talks about. So let's take a look at this one. So this guy, this is sitting in the middle for no reason. Let's put this guy on the left. I push it quite out just to have fun, and then let's push this to the right. Look what happens to the sound now. It gives much more interesting character to the sound, just panning it right and left. Now it's like on my head, on my right hand, left hand, and in the middle is still main shaker. And I'm like, yeah, interesting. And if I play all together, let's make it a bit less aggressive. Maybe 15 is enough even. Let's go back to span. That's fine, really, no problem at all. Simply because we are not destroying the sound both with kind of overdoing stuff. This is like a supernatural thing, just slightly pushing right and left, and it won't destroy your sound, and your mix sounds quite natural. So if you come back to the hi-hat, what we can do here. The first thing that you can do is actually using a bit slightly Haas effect, and if you take a delay, you don't even think about it as Haas effect neither in that case. What you can do, put it here. You can think about like slap delay, if that makes sense, because the ping pong, we put it this, and then turn the synth, and we push this one like this, and then we turn this up. The thing that I don't like with this one is actually I cannot control too much the stereo field. If you take echo, for example, in that case, it's a bit better. So let's take this off. Turn down again, turn down here. Let's turn off the other guy, this guy. Do it again. But now you can actually decrease this. Let's solo this. if I put 100%. And all together back again. Let's go to the mono test. Fine. Span. Almost mono, kind of. But it doesn't feel mono at all, isn't it? Because all with those small things all around, it gives the depth of stereo without destroying the sound too much. And the idea is basically using similar techniques and just build upon it and making this high end quite nice and without issues, less EQs, less problems with the mix. As you can see, I didn't really use any really mixing EQ, a slide here and there, but nothing too serious, simply because of picking things that you know that will work, and you are making this purposeful choice. So it's not like just going through the sample packs and then just trying to get the best sound. The idea is more like trying to find that sound cohesive altogether. And yeah, I think that was it for today's video. I hope it was not too technical, and I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something. And of course, other than that, I will catch you in the next one. Goodbye.